Welcome to Warblock. I am now going to look just quickly at this Al-Safa campaign. It's quite interesting really, just like everything else, because they've got ISIS surrounded, so this is the Syrian Arab Army with the National Defence Forces, and they have what's left of sort of ISIS, in this part of southern Syria, surrounded. But they're actually sort of on a volcano. Now, I don't think it's a big volcano, not like a Hawaiian volcano, but it's the Safa volcanic plateau, and I think you'll find it's probably fairly dormant. But now they're not exactly on that. If you sort of look at the outline, the outline does go sort of like that. So they obviously don't really have Mount Ganin, because like that, sort of down here, so they don't have these parts. But they sort of have that, and then up here. So this is the outline really. I mean, it's that's how I sort of set these things up. I mean, it's probably not as realistic as the reality of it is. It's quite hard to it's quite easy to sort of set scenarios up with dense formations because you can create the lines, but here, you've got these big holes, and you might assume that if this was a company, that they would actually spread out, so they would be taking out maybe 4 hexes worth, not just have 2 hexes as zones of control. Because if you want to create a line, you've got to sort of have that sort of spread. So there's the continuous line of control. There's line there and line there, but there's nothing there. So but the thing is, you can't sort of do that. Now, there's several objectives here. Basically, they take this area here, so they knock that back down to sort of that. So they basically take these 3 objectives. Now, they're not particular places, but they take this sort of area, this sort of southern, the area southwest of Ardh Safa. They also engage at these places. They don't take them, but they sort of engage. So that's the second sort of thing that happens in this scenario, and all the links are sort of down here. But the other thing is, ISIS tried to break out, and I sort of thought, well, to break out you'd have to get to the edge of the board, and I still haven't put in my sort of, off the edge of the board things yet, which I'll have to do at some point. But so that would be nice if I ever get that done. Obviously my 1st of July deadline is looming. It's amazing how quickly a year can pass, but it's not quite there yet. But the thing is, so if we can get to the edge of the board, so I've deliberately given them 3s. Now the thing is, what they're saying is that they don't have any food or water, so I'd imagine they probably don't have any cars, so they're all sort of foot mounted. I've tried to be as sparse as possible, but other than sort of just putting 1 in the middle, so I don't know how many there are in there. It's quite difficult. But so you sort of think, well, how quickly will it take them to get to the edge? Now, if he moves, say, from there, 1, 2, 3, if you can move 3, I think they can. You sort of think, well, okay, well, they could get off quite quickly or quite easily. So I think there's a lot of spirit of play in here, in the sense that you can't just sort of cheat, because I think the first thing that I possibly do is just send everyone off to the end of the board. Now, it might be quite difficult. I think up here it'd probably be easier. For example, you could send this one in this direction, this one in this direction, but you'd probably only move a couple through the hills. You can sort of send them in those directions. If you sent everything off to the edge of the board, the Syrians would have to split their forces to compete. So these 2 would probably have to go after this one would have to go after that, these 2 would have to go after that. There's a nice big space here. So essentially, there's not much of a strategy involved with this. It's not as though there's any really clear thing that you can do. It's, if anything, it's more a simulation of sorts. Because essentially you can't really, it's not as though you can sort of generate an archetypal sort of hex encounter front line, and you leverage lines of force. I mean, it's sort of a free-for-all. So if they did sort of just run off to the edge of the boards, presumably all their sort of supply lines, not that they really have any, but more like their sort of lines of command, or whatever sort of infrastructure they've got hidden in this volcanic plateau, would be lost. So you would have thought that the ISIS player would have to sort of, if there was an umpire in play, would have to demonstrate or basically explain what their strategy is in order to maintain their, at least the pocket that they hold, with regards to whatever sort of command and control and supply structure they have within that. Even if they have no water or food at all, they've probably got central dumps where they sleep, where they store ammunition. I'm not saying they're sort of massive things, but particular caves that they're operating from. So they might sort of head back there, and they've got, say, even if it's just the company commander type thing or the equivalent. It reminds me a bit like the I can't remember what it is now, but there's a big battle. I just can't remember what it is. It's one of these sort of Russian ones, Grozny. I think it's Grozny. I think it is actually Grozny, actually, where they had a lot of the city was defending with a lot of small irregular units, and which was great. And they would hunt. When the Russians would come in, they'd go out in their groups with their anti-tank rockets, and some of them would distract the tanks, and another one would fire. And it was all great, but the thing is, they didn't have any sort of central command, so they couldn't operate at, say, a battalion or regimental level. They could pretty much only operate at their own immediate group level. So they're all doing completely different random things. So in here, again, it's sort of slightly similar. You might imagine that that they're sort of acting relatively independently, but they've still got this sort of this source to to sort of like to protect and control, with some sort of command element that sort of is giving them sort of the objectives and directions, but they are in other regards autonomous. And so essentially, if you had an umpire, you would have to say, well, okay, well, that's what we're doing, so we know our invisible line. Now, I was thinking of this, and I have thought of it before, is using some of those lines to define the existing sort of outline of their sort of territory, so to speak. And I have thought of doing these things through other ways as well, but it's a bit complex. So you'd actually be able to see. I mean, on some of these more advanced sort of computer-based games, you got the front line; it automatically generates it. And I could do that, but there's no real easy way of generating it. It's always a bit odd, that one. So I'm sort of you have to sort of somehow try and create polygons around using all of these, and it's just, I don't know, I can't think of an easy way to do it. But the point is, if you had an umpire, you would say, okay, well, we're defending this outline. We already described it. If I had the pen tool, if we'd logged in, I could do that. Well, let's actually just do that now anyway. So, for example, what I'm trying to say is, if you had an umpire, you could say this is our pocket, so to speak. Now, if I had the lines, as I sort of said before, you could move this unit, for example, or you can move this unit here to there, and all of a sudden your pocket wouldn't appear to look like that, because you've still got a control area. Until these units enter that area, that pocket, that line still exists. So it's only to define that pocket that I've put these units sort of, the extremities as I've done. I mean, it could be slightly different. For example, it's probably more like that, or whatever. But the point is, you wouldn't necessarily have to leave the units there to define it, but you'd have to sort of operate, within that guideline. So you might be sort of saying, okay, well, we feel that there's an imminent threat here because you've got this sort of fairly large stack. I mean, I can't click because I've got the drawing tool on. Let me just turn it off for a second. So you've got mechanised, armour, and artillery. Now that's sort of, with some motorised units there. So as the ISIS player, you might be saying, well, we've got that, so we need to sort of put something in here to defend across this front. So you might sort of say, well, I'm going to move this down here to sort of do that. Now that's a long way off, to do something like that. Now, to be quite honest, you probably wouldn't want to choose that if you were to do something like that. These are the two inward reserves, so you've got this unit here and this unit here, so you might want to say, okay, well that's where that threat is coming from, so we'll move them there and then there, and somehow sort of prepare for whatever is going to come from here. But you might sort of see another threat, you might sort of see them sort of, pushing, as I say, this unit here, and so you might say, well, obviously the thing with ISIS here is that they clearly don't stand a chance. They're on their last legs, and again, with lots of scenarios like this as a sort of game, it's not a game that you can win, and to some extent it's more of a simulation. But it's sort of, you're thinking, well, what can they do? I mean, the fact that they don't have any food or water would sort of, really give you a sort of an idea that they might be just about to surrender, and so you wouldn't need to actually even move anything in. But they have just taken this sort of area here. Let's maybe put that in yellow. They have just taken this area, by force. They've put some pressure onto these areas, and so basically, bit by bit, they're going to sort of compress this. So I think what I'm trying to say, if you had an umpire, you would maybe say, this is our boundary, as we already sort of said, and then you state, well, okay, we're going to move around to respond to threats, and then you say, okay, I'm going to make a breakout. Now, you wouldn't say this to the other player, but because you're playing yourself, you don't need to. But then you would say, I'm going to make a breakout, and it would have to be a coordinated breakout in the sense that something is going to try and make a breakout. Now, it's quite difficult because they've only got 3 movements, so you'd have to sort of somehow wait for an opportunity, and I think that opportunity is going to be less defined by where the other player is. For example, there's plenty of units around here, but you might want to say, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? And you might sort of say, well, you know what? There's already a space there. There's not much between there and there. There's only 2 units, so we're going to try and break out this way. Now, obviously, by the time you start moving, they'll start moving in to respond. But as things get closer and closer, you can sort of say, okay, well, we're actually going to break out, but part of our breakout strategy is we're going to attack this unit. We're going to punch our way through that, so we're actually going to go for it. I mean, obviously, if we can get around it, then even better. But with the intention of doing that, because with a 3-3, you could attack it with 2 of these at 3-1. And so, but the thing is, you would define your exit strategy either by, for example, moving these units back here, as these units get overtaken, even if you just fall back without fighting for them, and moving this unit up, etc. So those 3 units could take the place of these, and then these 3 units would essentially then move in this sort of direction, and then you'd have 5 units, doing that breakout, actually targeting that with, a couple of hits, and then pushing out that way. So you would have 5 units, and the rest would then actually sort of, maintain their presence in the Safa volcanic plateau, as they're doing, possibly negotiating a surrender, possibly preparing to surrender. But, that breakout could be the breakout that has the main leaders or the important people or some plans or some whatever they've got. That could be serving a greater purpose than just people running away, etc., etc. So, I mean, the thing is, I think you've got to sort of do a little bit of role play there, so as to not make it just sort of this completely random race for the edge of the board, losing, all your sort of whatever, for whatever it's worth, command and control structure within this sort of area, because you sort of assume you've got something like that. So it's basically being a bit mature and adult and grown up about how you approach it. But I think if you were to do that and define, okay, this is my exit strategy, the only thing is you might want to have two. You might actually want to say, I'm going to have two, but you'd have to justify. For example, you couldn't just justify sending them all off randomly for the nearest point, because there wouldn't really be a lot of, sort of logic or common sense behind that. Although maybe you could, that maybe that wouldn't be unrealistic. But you'd have to argue what you're doing to a little extent. So that's pretty much it, really. I don't feel like playing it really, because I think it's it just sort of, well, I don't know. Let me have a little couple of turns, because I feel like not playing it, and then once I get into it, I sort of, and then think, oh, this is quite interesting. So the Syrian Arab Army go first. I did that deliberately so that they don't sort of move out straight off, because you could move first, and you could sort of try and get to the edge of the board there, etc., etc. But so you've really sort of considered what you're going to do. So the situation will change as these units sort of move in. So now I think the biggest threats are the ones that are actually nearest the board. So these are not such a threat, because they've actually got to go through quite a lot of hill terrain to get anywhere. He could be 1, 2, 3 feet. If you can move forward, you could possibly get there. So we can sort of say, okay, well, that's one sort of threat that we can deal with. Let's sort of outline this. So we can say that we can contain that somehow. So we'll move these into a sort of position to stop this unit and to possibly target it. Now again, you probably wouldn't know where these units are, so to some extent you might even print. If you were printing and playing this, you could then play with hidden rules, hidden movement, so that the Syrian player doesn't know where the ISIS player is. So that would make it quite interesting, and that would make this game actually a lot more interesting. Very interesting, really. So we've got this unit here, and we've got two of those. So I think you could possibly say, well, and this one can be a sort of, it can go either way. There's a sort of a midline reserve. Here, I mean, it's pretty obvious that all of this is going to somehow have to close the gap in here. Ideally presenting a line more like that. Here, it would probably be best to go there, there. These guys would be here with the option of covering that. This guy would somehow push in here, the options of covering. So I think that would be my sort of, and then this guy here would obviously do the same thing. So we're creating sort of lines against obviously there's a lot of dead ground in there, but that would sort of cover those. Here we'd just be pushing this line. I think that it's quite simple and straightforward to cover just about everything. So let's do that. If I can remember what I've done, it doesn't matter if I don't, but because of course they can only move one. But the motorised can move a little faster. artillery down there. Zero damage. What's it got? We can't move any further anyway, even if you tried. It's pretty much everything moved. Okay, well we can attack here I think. Or not. Some movement. I'll have to get that. He's got some movement. I think it will be a 1-to-1. Okay. Thing is, we can get a 1-to-1 against that, and get a 2-to-1 down here against that. They can do a lot of 1-to-1s, or they can manoeuvre away. And here we've got a 2-to-1. I think they'd be better off retreating into the hills. So where are we going to try and escape? Where's the weak point? The weak point is still up here in the north, I think. And we could try and break out with these 3 units. Just push them straight down there. But I've just moved them out, so that's too late. Still looks like the best one here, because basically they only have 1 unit. And they can move 2 hexes through the hills, basically. So this is what I'm going to try and do my breakout. With these 3 units. push forward a little bit here. So if it comes anywhere near, we'll be able to attack him in the desert, we'll attack him in the hills. Like that. One to one. Okay, so that's that. So I'm trying to push back to this sort of the edge of the hilly area. Syrian Defence Forces don't know I'm choosing this as my breakout point. I feel like doing an attack somewhere is sort of be a one-to-one. Maybe not. Okay. So. Well, I think we're going to try and close this gap anyway. That would be the natural thing to do. That's how I moved him last time. Yep. Range. 2, 3, 4 is out of range as well. So that's that. The noose narrows. It's the ISIS player. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2. Look at that. Okay. Move. Air power. Oh. Let's not use the air power just yet. Okay, so we've got an artillery to bear now. 0. Okay, we can do an attack here. Oh, they were doubled in the odds. I mean, they were tripled. 3-to-1 odds in the exchange. So the first bit of action has been an exchange down here. So we're going to be defending at 2s. So that should be a 3-to-1 there as well. So we push them back. It starts. Okay. So an ISIS offensive. And the exchange. Well, the Syrian player can say that they now figured it out. So 0 damage. With 6 damage. They don't move very fast through these hills. Okay. Pushed him back. Now here, we've suspected that they're trying to push that break out. What can we do to stop that? Not much really. The best thing might be to just stay there and recover that depression. Okay. It's interesting, really. I think even though it is my bright idea, I think I've outwitted myself because I'm pretty sure we had to break out of here. I mean, one. I think the Syrian army have been outwitted on this one. I mean, with me in command. I don't think they could even stop this mass breakout, even if they wanted. I mean, that's the thing. I don't think even if you tried, they just don't have the mobility. They've got all their units stuck in the volcano. You know, even if we wanted to move that, we'd have to take a turn, get there, and then all driving all the way around should be the only way we could get there fast. Under one. Ah, that was not good. I was going to sort of not do it, but I thought might as well. But he went there, even further forward. I really need to get this off-board exit strategy sorted out. Okay, one more turn. Right, so now Syrian Arab Army know there's a breakout over here. Right. Well, these units are going to get stuck there. Okay, and that was just panic mode because now we've got a bigger gap here. I suppose we could fill that quite quickly. We've got quite a close net forming here. This unit's relatively distressed, so we can attack that. Motorised unit, possibly a 2-to-1, 5-to-1 DR, push them back in that direction, which is quite nice. Still got some movement, so we'll go for this unit. Pushed him back with a DR right onto the sideline there. Well, maybe we can get him with our artillery. No. Okay, so let's sort of recap on that. So essentially, I made all my plans. We've got a central core, which we've, without real planning, have reduced, which is quite, I think, acceptable. The breakout here, with one unit successfully broken out, we'll move them into there. Move these over to there. We took some casualties on this unit. Now the problem is, for the Syrians, is that they just really don't have the resources to sort of fill this line. We've got this as a mobile unit and this which could possibly come around here. I mean, these would be able to go there, there. We've got some units under here, we could possibly get to there. Put him there. We could possibly fill that line and then justify the sort of the headline declaration of, you know, ISIS breakout attempt rebuffed or refused or defeated or prevented, whatever you want to describe it as, but that's it. Let's just see. So everything's moved up, but we've got him there, so it's the ISIS player now. Right, well, he's going to move off the board. So we're going to say he's sort of off the board, and to make it easier, we'll move them sort of, well, we'll just move them there. Anything there is off board, and there and there. Those are two off board hexes. So we've got 3 units off. This is sort of part and parcel of how my plan was, to fight our way out. Now I did deliberately just give them these 113s, you know, and I thought, well, they're going to be slow, but they're slow through the hills. But if you actually, you know, because they're faster than these, their speed is more apparent, and they're just on foot right through this volcano. Exchange, so they didn't win that battle. Against the lesser defendable National Defence Forces, push them back. So maybe they did actually manage to escape with some of their units. I mean, we don't know. I mean, didn't. I mean, you know, the headlines are quite often pro-Syrian government. It's possibly conceivable. I mean, this isn't a simulation or anything, but when you think about it, maybe they, you know, it's quite hard to stop these sorts of units. I mean, one of the key things here is the fact that they ignore zones of control. That's because they can go through, they operate at night as well, generally speaking. So, presumably sort of got through these gaps at night. So there's that's the Syrian Army now. Right. What can they do? Well, how far can you get? 1, 2, 3. Oh, they got stopped in the zone of control. .3, that's good. Just after 1.6, 1.9. Not worth attacking there. 1 to 1. And we've got some air power. Let's apply that there. And 4, 5. Desperation. What's his depression? Nothing. 2 to 1. And a DR, that was good. Let's see what we can do here. Oh, that was so lucky, a 1 to 1, that wasn't really worth it. We pushed him back the right way as well. And he's got enough movement to sort of do something. I don't want to commit another 1 to 1 there, that was not best. Okay. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to sort of play it to the bitter end. I think the point has sort of been made. I think it's a bit difficult to sort of do and play and consider a scenario like that, because no matter what, in all honesty, the irregulars find it very easy to get around through gaps, and so you'd have to have some way of sort of preventing that. And even once they get to a sort of size like this, they could almost squeeze right up, and as soon as they sort of close the net, then they could just pounce through it and with their greater speed run past. So you'd have to have two. You'd have to have an internal mesh and an external one. And to some extent, I mean, it's not too unrealistic as to, as a representation of the difficulty. It's just I find it very difficult to comprehend how they can hide. When you look at the pictures, it's just open desert and this bit of hilly volcano, and it gets hot in the desert. So I find it remarkable, really, that they can actually survive that long. I mean, maybe they're digging wells to get water and eating lizards. you know, who knows what they're doing. But you know, it's quite an expanse. You know, even if you're just talking about a 20-kilometre radius, it's a lot of land. And they move around at night. You know, they could be moving out one at a time in different directions each night, and getting, you know, quite a few people out bit by bit. And it'd be quite hard to actually sort of spot them. You know, I mean, if it was like a sort of, you know, a border wall like with Mexico, you'd be okay because you could drive around in your pickups with your infrared, but you're not dealing with people that are sort of, you know, at a citizen level, and these people will fire back, so you can't just go around because you might get trapped. You know, I mean, if you're driving around, you know, you're a target for even small arms fire. So, you know, and then RPGs, and you know, so, and they probably don't care to some extent. They're probably leaving it porous because then it gives the ISIS the opportunity to escape, and making everything a little less bloody. I don't know really, but it's sort of an interesting scenario. I always find them these are things like this a bit odd because it's no clear sort of front line. And I think, you know, the running away strategy is probably, you know, quite plausible and maybe what they would have actually done, as opposed, you know, a lot of this sort of holding the ground, etc. I think the most amazing thing for me was to sort of, you know, figure out that this was like a volcanic plateau. I haven't really looked at any pictures. I've just looked at it on Google Maps, but it looks sort of, they do look like some very clear volcano things. You know, here, and I think there's another one here. It looks like a lunar surface. And I did wonder whether or not ISIS were plotting to activate the volcano as some sort of last-ditch environmental weapon. You know, I can't really see them doing that, but it just seems something ultimately sinister about hiding out in a volcano. I haven't looked at it sort of photographically from the side to see how high it is, or, you know, whether it's significant. It struck me as being quite a flat volcano, more as a sort of a plateau. But so there you go. Maybe you can look the pictures up. I didn't do huge amounts of research, so I hope you enjoyed that. I mean, obviously we got this sort of contended break out there. Obviously a perfect example for applying the off-map movement rules, extracting units off the map so we can say we got them off the map, because otherwise they look a bit odd there, just sat there. But those have escaped, and these ones will probably be able to get through onto, but they'll probably be able to close that gap fairly soon, and it will just, game will continue, as you might imagine. But you know, you might want to play it yourself to see how well you can do, etc., etc., and see whether you can, in advance, with hindsight, prevent that northern escape route. Only you will know. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.